Chapter 4 of Galactic Patrol by E. Smith. Chapter 4. Spacesuited complete except for helmets, and with those ready at hand, Kinnison and Van Buskirk sat in the tiny control room of their lifeboat as it drifted inert through interstellar space. Kinnison was poring over charts taken from the Britannia's pilot room. The sergeant gazed idly into a detector plate. "No clear ether yet, I don't suppose," the captain remarked, as he rolled up a chart and tossed it aside. "No let up for a second. They're not taking any chances at all. Found out where we are? Alsacan ought to be hereabouts somewhere, hadn't it?" "I've got our coordinate roughly. Alsacan would be fairly close for a ship, but it's out of the question for us. Nothing much inhabited around here either, apparently, to say nothing of being civilized. Scarcely one to the block. Don't think I've been out here before, have you?" "Off my beat entirely. How long do you figure it'll be before it's safe for us to blast off?" "Can't start blasting until your plates are clear. Anything we can detect us as soon as we start putting out power." "We may be in for a spell of waiting, then." Van Buskirk broke off suddenly, and his tone changed to one of tense excitement. "Great blasts of fire! Look at that!" "Blinding blue blazes!" Kinnison exclaimed, staring into the plate. With all macro-universal space and all the time in eternity to play around in, the blind god of chance had to bring her back here and now. For there, right in their laps, not 100 miles away, lay the Britannia and her two pirate captors. "Better go free, hadn't we?" whispered Van Buskirk. "Daren't," grunted Kinnison. "At this range they'd spot us in a split second. Acting like a hunk of loose metal's our only chance. We'll be able to dodge any flying chunks, I think. There she goes." From their coign of vantage the two patrolmen saw their gallant ship's terrific end, saw the one pirate vessel suffer collision with the flying fragment, saw the other escape inertialess, saw her disappear. The inert pirate vessel had now almost exactly the same velocity as the lifeboat, both in speed and in direction. Only very slowly were the large craft and the small approaching each other. Kinnison stood rigid, staring into his plate, his nervous hands grasping the switches, whose closing, at the first sign of detection, would render them inertialess and would pour full blast into their driving projectors. But minute after minute passed, and nothing happened. "Why don't they do something?" he burst out finally. "They know we're here. There isn't a detector made that could be badly enough out of order to miss us at this distance. Why, they can see us from there, with no detectors at all." "Asleep, unconscious, or dead," Van Buskirk diagnosed. "And they certainly are not asleep. And believe me, Kim, that ship was nudged. It's quite possible that she was hit hard enough to lay out most of her crew cold. Anyway, enough of them to put her out of control. And say it's a practical certainty that she has a standard emergency inlet port. How about it, huh?" Kinnison's mind leaped eagerly at the daring suggestion of his subordinate, but he did not reply at once. Their first, their only duty concerned the safety of two spools of tape. But if the lifeboat lay there inert until the pirates regained control of their craft, detection and capture were certain. The same fate was as certain should they attempt flight, with all nearby space so full of enemy flyers. Therefore, harebrained though it appeared at first glance, Van Buskirk's wild idea was actually the safest course. "All right, Bus, we'll try it. We'll take a chance on going free, and using 1/10 of a dyne of drive for 100th of a second. Get into lock with your magnets." The lifeboat flashed against the pirate's armored side, and the sergeant, by deftly manipulating his two small hand magnets, worked it rapidly along the steel plating toward the driving jets. There, in the conventional location just forward of the main driving projectors, was indeed the emergency inlet port, with its galactic standard controls. In a few minutes the two warriors were inside, dashing toward the control room. There Kinnison glanced at the board and heaved a sigh of relief. "Fine. Same type as the one we studied. Same race, too," he went on, eyeing the motionless forms scattered about the floor. Seizing one of the bodies, he propped it against a panel, thus obscuring a multiple lens. That's the eye overlooking the control room, he explained unnecessarily. We can't cut their headquarters visibeams without creating suspicion, but we don't want them looking around in here until after we've done a little stage setting for them. But they'll get suspicious anyway when we go free, Van Buskirk protested. Sure, but we'll arrange for that later. First thing we've got to do is make sure that all the crew, except possibly one or two in here, are really dead. Don't beam unless you have to. We want to make it look as though everybody got killed or fatally injured in the crash. A complete tour of the vessel with a grim and distasteful accompaniment was made. Not all of the pirates were dead or even disabled, but, unarmored as they were and taken completely by surprise, the survivors could offer but little resistance. A cargo port was open and the Britannia's lifeboat was drawn inside. Then back to the control room, where Kinnison picked up another body and strode to the main panels. This fellow, he announced, was hurt badly but managed to get to the board. He threw in the free switch like this, and then full blast drive so. Then he pulled himself over to the steering globe and tried to lay the pointers back toward headquarters, but couldn't quite make it. He died with the course set right there. Not exactly toward the solar system, you notice. That would be too much of a coincidence, but close enough to help a lot. His bracelet got caught in the guard like this. There is clear evidence as to exactly what happened. Now we'll get out of range of that eye and let the body that's covering it float away naturally. Now what? Asked Van Buskirk after the two had hidden themselves. Nothing whatever until we have to, was the reply. Wish we could go on like this for a couple of weeks, but there's not a chance. Headquarters will get curious pretty quick as to why we're shoving off. Even as he spoke, a furious burst of noise erupted from the communicator, a noise which meant, Vessel F-47U-596, where are you going and why? Report! At that brusque command, one of the still forms struggled weakly to its knees and tried to frame words, but fell back dead. Perfect, Kinnison breathed into Van Buskirk's ear. Couldn't have been better. Now they'll probably take their time about rounding us up. Listen, here comes some more. The communicator was again sending. See if you can get a direction on their transmitter. If there are any survivors able to report, do so at once. Kinnison understood the dynamic cone to say. Then the voice moderating, as though the speaker had turned from his microphone to someone nearby, it went on. No one answers, sir. This, you know, is the ship that was lying closest to the new patrol ship when she exploded. So close that her navigator did not have time to go free before collision with the debris. The crew were apparently all killed or incapacitated by the shock. If any of the officers survive, have them brought in for a trial, a more distant voice commanded savagely. Boskonia has no use for bunglers except to serve as examples. Have the ship seized and returned here as soon as possible. Could you trace it, Bus? Kinnison demanded. Even one line on their headquarters would be mighty useful. No, it came in scrambled. Couldn't separate it from the rest of the static out there. Now what? Now we eat and sleep. Particularly and most emphatically, we sleep. Watches? No need. I'll be awakened in plenty of time if anything happens. My lens, you know. They ate ravenously and slept prodigiously, then ate and slept again. Rested and refreshed, they studied charts. But Van Buskirk's mind was very evidently not upon the maps before them. You understand that jargon, and it doesn't even sound like a language to me, he pondered. It's the lens, of course. Maybe it's something that shouldn't be talked about? No secret, not among us at least, Kinnison assured him. The lens receives as pure thought any pattern of force which represents, or is in any way connected with, thought. My brain receives this thought in English, since that is my native language. At the same time, my ears are practically out of circuit, so that I actually hear the English language instead of whatever noise is being made. I do not hear the foreign sounds at all. Therefore, I haven't the slightest idea what the pirate's language sounds like, since I've never heard any of it. Conversely, when I want to talk to someone who doesn't know any language I do, I simply think into the lens and direct its force at him. He thinks I'm talking to him in his own mother tongue. Thus, you are hearing me now in perfect Valerian Dutch, even though you know that I only speak only a dozen or so words of it, and those with a vile American accent. Also, you're hearing it in my voice, even though you know I'm actually not saying a word, since you can see that my mouth is wide open, and that neither my lips, tongue, nor vocal cords are moving. If you were a Frenchman, you'd be hearing this in French, or if you were a Monarchan and couldn't talk at all, you'd be getting it as regular Monarchan telepathy. Oh, I see, I think. The astounded Dutchman gulped. Then why couldn't you talk back to them through their phones? Because the lens, although a mighty fine and versatile thing, is not omnipotent, Kinnison replied dryly. It sends out only thought, and thought waves lying below the level of the ether cannot affect a microphone. The microphone, not being itself intelligent, cannot receive thought. Of course, I can broadcast a thought. Everybody does, more or less. But even with the full amplification of the lens, the range is very limited. In lens-to-lens communication, we can cover real distances. But without a lens at the other end, I can cover only a few thousand kilometers. Of course, power increases with practice, and I'm not very good at it yet. You can receive a thought? Everybody broadcasts? Then you can read minds, Van Buskirk stated rather than asked. When I so will it, yes. That was what I was doing while we were mopping up. I demanded the galactic coordinates of their base from every one of them alive, but none of them knew them. I got a lot of pictures and descriptions of the buildings, layout, arrangements, and personnel of the base, but not a hint as to its location in space. The navigators were all dead, and not even the Eurasians understand death. But that's getting pretty deeply into philosophy, and it's time to eat again. Let's go. Days passed uneventfully, but finally the communicator again began to talk. Two pirate ships were closing in upon the supposedly derelict cruiser, discussing with each other the exact point of convergence of the three courses. I was hoping that we'd be able to communicate with base before they caught up with us, Kinnison remarked. But I guess it's no dice. The ether's as full of interference as ever. They're a suspicious bunch, and they aren't going to let us get away with a single thing if they can help it. You've got that duplicate of their communications unscrambler built? Yes. That was it you just listened to. I built it out of our own stuff, and I've gone over the whole ship with a cleaner. As far as I can see, there isn't a trace, not even a fingerprint, to show that anybody except her own crew has ever been aboard. Good work. This course takes us right through a planetary system in a few minutes, and we'll have to unload there. Let's see. This chart marks planets 2 and 3 as inhabited, with a red reference number, 27. That means practically unexplored and unknown. No patrol representation or connection. No commerce. State of civilization unknown. Visited only once in the third galactic survey. That was in the days of the semi-inert drive, when it took years to cross the galaxy. Not so good, apparently. But maybe all the better for us, at that. Anyway, it's a forced landing, so get ready to shove off. They boarded their lifeboat, placed it in the cargo lock, opened the outer port upon its automatic block, and waited. At their awful galactic speed, the diameter of a solar system would be traversed in such a small fraction of a second that observation would be impossible, to say nothing of computation. They would have to act first and compute later. They flashed into the strange system. A planet loomed terrifyingly close, at their frightful velocity almost invisible even upon their ultravision plates. The lifeboat shot out, becoming inert as it passed the screen. The cargo port swung shut. Luck had been with them. The planet was scarcely a million miles away. While Van Buskirk drove toward it, Kinnison made hasty observations. Could have been better, but could have been a lot worse, he reported. This is Planet 4, uninhabited, which is very good. 3, though, is clear over across the sun, and 2 isn't any too close for a space sun flight, better than 80 million miles. Easy enough as far as distance goes. We've all made longer hops in our suits. We'll be open to detection for at least 20 minutes. Can't be helped, though. Here we are. Going to land her free, huh? Van Buskirk whistled. What a chance. It'd be a bigger one to take the time to land her inert. Her power will hold, I hope. We'll inert her and match velocities with her when we come back. We'll have more time then. The lifeboat stopped instantaneously in a free landing upon the uninhabited, desolate, rocky soil of the strange world. Without a word, the two men leaped out, carrying fully packed knapsacks. A portable projector was then dragged out, and its fierce beam directed into the base of the hill beside which they had landed. A cavern was quickly made, and while its glassy walls were still smoking hot, the lifeboat was driven within it. With their delamiters, the two wayfarers then undercut the hill, so that a great slide of soil and rock obliterated every sign of the visit. Kinnison and Van Buskirk could find their vessel again from their accurately taken bearings, but they hoped no one else could. Then, still without a word, the two adventurers flashed upward. The atmosphere of the planet, tenuous and cold though it was, nevertheless, so sorely impeded their progress that minutes of precious time were required for the driving projectors of their suits to force them through its thin layer. Eventually, however, they were in interplanetary space, and were flying at quadruple the speed of light. Then Van Buskirk spoke. "Landing the boat, hiding it, and this trip are the danger spots. Heard anything yet?" "No, and I don't believe we will. I think probably we've lost them completely. Won't know definitely, though, until after they catch the ship, and that won't be for 10 minutes yet. We'll be landed by then." A world now loomed beneath them, a pleasant, earthly appearing world of scattered clouds, green forests, rolling plains, wooded and snow-capped mountain ranges, and rolling oceans. Here and there were to be seen what looked like cities, but Kinnison gave them a wide berth, electing to land upon an open meadow in the shelter of a towering black and glassy cliff. "Ah, just in time. They're beginning to talk," Kinnison announced. "Unimportant stuff yet, opening the ship and so on. I'll relay the talk as nearly verbatim as possible when it gets interesting." He fell silent, then went on in a sing-song tone as though he were reciting from memory, which in effect he was. "Captain's ship P4J263 and EQ769B47 calling Hellmouth. We've stopped and have boarded F47 U569. Everything is in order and is deduced and reported by your observers. Everyone aboard is dead. They did not all die at the same time, but they all died from the effects of the collision. There's no trace of outside interference, and all the personnel are accounted for. Hellmouth, speaking for Boskoni. Your report is inconclusive. Search the ship minutely for tracks, prints, scratches. Note any missing supplies or misplaced items of equipment. Study carefully all mechanisms, particularly converters and communicators, for signs of tampering or dismantling." "Whew," whistled Kinnison. "They'll find where you took that communicator apart, Bus, just as sure as hell's a man trap." "No, they won't," declared Van Buskirk as positively. "I did it with rubber-nosed pliers, and if I left a scratch or a scar or a print on it, I'll eat it, tubes and all." A pause. "We've studied everything most carefully, O Hellmouth, and find no trace of tampering or visit." "Hellmouth again. Your report is still inconclusive. Whoever did what has been done is probably a Lensman, and certainly has brains. Give me the present recorded serial number of all port openings, and the exact number of times you've opened each port." "Ouch," groaned Kinnison. "If that means what I think it does, all hell's out for noon. Did you see any numbering recorders on those ports? I didn't. Of course, neither of us thought of such a thing. Shut up, here comes some more stuff. Port opening recorder serial numbers are as follows. They don't mean a thing to us. We've opened the emergency inlet port once and the starboard lock twice. No other port at all." And here's Hellmouth again. "Ah, as I thought. The emergency port was opened once by outsiders, and the starboard cargo port twice. The Lensman came aboard, headed the ship towards Seoul, took his lifeboat aboard, listened to us, and departed at his leisure. And this in the very midst of our fleet, the entire personnel of which was supposed to be looking for him. How supposedly intelligent spacemen could be guilty of such utter and indefensive stupidity?" "He's telling him plenty, Bus, but there's no use in repeating it. The tone can't be reproduced, and it's simply taking the hide right off their backs. Here's some more. General broadcast. Ship F-47U-596, in its supposedly derelict condition, flew from the point of destruction of the patrol ship on course longitude 35127 degrees, latitude 5.23 degrees, distance 24,700 parsecs. Cancel all previous orders and investigate. No use repeating it, Bus. He's simply giving directions for scouring our whole line of flight. Fading out, they're going on or back. This outfit, of course, is good for only the closest kind of close-up work. And we're out of the frying pan and into the fire, huh? Oh no, we're a lot better off than we were. We're on a planet and not using any power that they can trace. Also, they got to cover so much territory that they can't comb it very fine, and that gives the rest of the fellows a break. Furthermore, a crushing weight descended upon his back, and the two found themselves fighting for their lives. From the bare, supposedly safe rock face of the cliff, there had emerged rope-tentacled monstrosities in a ravenously attacking swarm. In the raving blasts of delameters, hundreds of the gargoyle horde vanished in vivid flashes of radiance. But on they came, by thousands, and it seemed by millions, dashing madly toward them. Eventually the batteries energizing the projectors became exhausted. Then flailing coil met shearing steel. Fierce-driven parrot beaks clanged against space-tempered armor. Bulbous heads pulped under hard-swung axes. But not for the fractional second necessary for inertialess flight could the two patrolmen win clear. Then Kinnison sent out his SOS. "A lensman calling help! A lensman calling help!" he broadcast with the full power of mind and lens. Immediately a high girlish voice poured into his brain. "Coming where are the Lins? Coming at speed to the cliff of the Catlats. Hold until I come. I arrive in 30. 30 what? What possible intelligible relative measure of that unknown and unknowable concept, time, can be conveyed by thought alone? "Keep slugging, Bus," Kinnison panted. "Help is on the way. A local cop, voice sounds like a woman, will be here in 30-somethings. Don't know whether it's 30 minutes or 30 days, but we'll still be here." "Maybe so and maybe not," grunted the Dutchman. "Something's coming besides help. Look up and see if you see what I think I do." Kinnison did. Through the air from the top of the cliff, there was hurtling downward toward them a veritable dragon, a nightmare's horror of hideously reptilian head, of leathern wings, of viciously fanged jaws, of frightfully taloned feet, of multiple knotty arms, of long, sinuous, heavily scaled serpent's body. In fleeting glimpses through the writhing tentacles of his opponents, Kinnison perceived little by little the full picture of that unbelievable monstrosity. And accustomed as he was to the outlandish denizens of worlds even yet scarcely known to man, his very senses reeled at the sight. Into Chapter 4.